It's one of the seven wonders of the modern world, and over 1 million ships have transited it since it first opened in the 1900s. Keep watching Planet Cruise Weekly, as today we discuss cruising the Panama Canal. Well, hello and welcome to episode 81 of Planet Cruise Weekly. I'm Keith, this is Glenn, my old cruising buddy from our days in Cunard.
Cunard, and now we're married. We're not together.
No.
But we've both got rings. Look at Keith's got his ring on.
This is true. I literally just tied the knot. So thank you for all your messages of congratulations.
And for all those people that didn't think we actually had wives, we actually have.
We do, yeah.
We were together.
This is purely a working relationship, much to contrary opinion.
A bit like a marriage. Don't talk, argue.
That's right, yeah. And are forced to do things together.
Yeah, exactly.
So, right, let's talk about today, of course, where we're going to be looking at the Panama Canal. Probably the greatest man-made canal journey in the world. You've got a 2,000 to 3,000 berth cruise ship rising up 85 foot through these massive man-made locks. It's absolutely incredible. So you can understand why it is one of the real bucket list things to do for most cruisers. And we say definitely do it if you're thinking about it. So let's have a look at some of the background of the Panama Canal.
Now, for those of you who don't know, the canal was designed to let ships travel between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans with a passage through Central America. An incredibly efficient alternative to sailing around South America, which, as many of you know, can get a little bit choppy. And that's exactly what the cruise ships use it for. Typically, itineraries start on the East Coast, often in Florida, then they hit a few Caribbean islands, pass through the canal, and then the sailing on the other side.
And while for the majority of cruise passengers a trip through the canal is an unforgettable experience, it is important to note that it does usually take a full 24 hours to sail through the canal, and much of that time will be spent waiting in line with dozens of other ships, so make sure you've got a good book out there as well.
The canal, which is managed by Panama, is continuously being upgraded, so it's common to see construction from your balcony or when you're on deck. Travellers always made their way across the 50-mile isthmus that connects North and South America, dubbed the crossroads of the world.
And that's true, but until the canal was built, the Trans-Isthmus Trek involved a long winding path through jungle rivers. The US took over in 1903, they poured $352 million into the project and finally opened the Panama Canal in August of 1914.
Since then, 1 million ships have made the journey, with approximately 40 vessels travelling through the canal each day. Some of these are of course cruise ships, but many are cargo ships taking advantage of the shortcut the canal provides. But obviously, this does come at a cost.
Now, the actual official season runs from October to April. The best time to go is after the rainy season, which ends in November. But do be prepared for hot, humid weather. Take plenty of water out on deck and plenty of sunblock.
So which cruise lines obviously use the Panama Canal? Now, most of the major lines and some smaller ones offer at least a few Panama Canal sailings each season. Princess are known as the main player, mainly because it's designed two ships, the Island Princess and Coral Princess, to sail the canal. Each ship has more than 700 balcony staterooms, and both sail the canal all winter long.
The Panama Canal is also a popular repositioning cruise between Alaska and the Caribbean, and companies such as Cunard and Holland America will often send a ship through when repositioning to Los Angeles for the Hawaii season, which is also the first time that I did that, which is really nice actually because you get a chance to come up the Pacific coast and visit a few of the nice Mexican ports as well. Exhibition ships such as Limbad and tour companies known for river cruises such as Grand Circle and Talc also make the journey if you do fancy a smaller ship experience. Now, current cruise lengths can be anywhere from 7 to 9 days, maybe 10 to 11 days, or even 14 to 16 days, so it's a lot more varied now. Several lines such as Princess, Crystal, Holland America Seabourn, Regent Seven Seas and Cunard also offer a few cruises per season in the 18 to 21 day range, and cruises that transit all the way to the Pacific Northwest or Alaska that can take up to a month.
Apart from the length of sailing, the biggest decision you'll need to make on the Panama cruise is whether to opt for a traditional trans-canal experience or take the partial crossing.
Now, for the trans-canal crossing, this of course is the most popular Panama Canal itinerary, and it's still got pretty much the same version of the standard Florida to West Coast route. Miami and Fort Lauderdale are the main departure cities in Florida. Los Angeles, San Diego and San Francisco are the key West Coast cities that you head to, although longer transits also depart from Seattle or Vancouver. Now obviously you can choose to transit either way, Atlantic to Pacific or Pacific to Atlantic. And remember your gain hours if you choose the latter. And there's also an argument that the views are better with that way, as you're essentially going kind of downhill, in that the Atlantic Ocean is a lot lower than the Pacific, hence the need for the locks, and therefore the views down the canal from the locks are better coming from the higher Pacific end to the Atlantic. For many though, it simply depends on whether you want the longer flight at the start or the end of your cruise.
That's much easier. If having the full canal experience is part of your bucket list, or if you're an experienced geek and you don't care too much about shore excursions within Panama itself, this trip is for you. Most full Panama Canal cruises do call into the Western Caribbean, the Costa Rica ports of Limon on the Atlantic coast and Punta Arenas on the Pacific, and Cartagena, Colombia, and some of the other stops include Puerto Cozal, Guatemala and Western Mexico.
Now, as well as the trans-canal options, you also can do a partial crossing. Now, on partial crossings, the ship doesn't actually cross the entire canal. Instead, the ship crosses through one lock, then lets passengers off in the town of Gamboa along the canal. From there, passengers can enjoy a myriad of shore excursions and take in sights that they otherwise wouldn't see on a day-long crossing. Now, for those who still want the full canal experience, including the Galliard Cut, the Centennial Bridge and the Bridge of the Americas, excursions are available that will take you out in a smaller boat further along the canal.
Now the option is good for cruisers who want a taste of the canal but who also want to see part of Panama, as most partial transit itineraries also stop at Colón. Because most partial transit cruises leave from Florida, other ports usually include the islands of Southern and Western Caribbean, Cartagena in Colombia as well.
Some lines offer the same kind of partial crossing shore excursions, but they don't actually enter the canal at all. Instead, the ships dock for a day at the Caribbean entrance to the canal, which is at Colón in Panama. For these, you need to look for Caribbean or Central American itineraries that call in at Colón, and then check the shore excursions offerings very, very closely. So let's move on now and have a look at the main highlight ports that you'll often visit on a Panama Canal itinerary.
Now it's claimed Costa Ricans are the happiest people in the world. Take one look at their country and you'll see just how much they've got to smile about. A blend of rainforest, wildlife and sun-baked sands. It showcases the best of Latin America's natural beauty. It's also one of the few places in the world where you can be flying through the jungle on a zip line 1 minute and horse riding the next in the mountains. There are so many fabulous encounters with nature available at this port, you'll be hard to decide what shore excursion you're going to do.
And of course, the port we're talking about is Punta Arenas. And of course, it is here where you can do a visit to the Tabacón Resort Hot Springs, which takes you onto the slopes of the active Arenal volcano. Now, the Paris volcano features this amazing sight of a huge crater filled with iridescent blue water. You can also walk through a cloud forest at Villa Blanca, where you're surrounded by mist and water droplets clinging to the vegetation. Or you can see one of Costa Rica's renowned rainforests at the Pura Vida Gardens, or climb a set of wooden steps up to the La Paz waterfall gardens. It's all pretty much incredible. And interesting, another little bit of information for the kind of techno geeks out there that love the concept of shipping and finding out about stuff. The actual Panama Canal is one of the only places where when the pilots come on, they take full command of the ship. Now, another highlight is Colón. Be careful how you pronounce this one, as Ben and I just discovered. If you're on a partial crossing or simply docked at Colón, you might consider completing the Panama Canal crossing in a smaller boat. It's a popular excursion. It begins at Gamboa, goes basically all the way through the other two canal locks through to the Pacific Ocean, and then you get bussed back. So again, you don't even necessarily have to be on a Panama Canal sailing to experience the Panama Canal if you do call in at Colón.
Now, other great shore excursions options include taking the refurbished Panama Railway from the Pacific to the Atlantic. It rides parallel to the canal and offers a great view in luxurious panelled railway cars. Another exciting alternative is to take a trek through the rainforest at Gamboa, or visit the authentic Embera Indian village on the Chagas River, which often takes place by canoe, when you are invited into the world of the ancient ritual, native culture and timeless wonder. Watch a ceremonial dance routine, explore the unspoiled grounds and marvel at the exquisite handmade crafts.
Next up, a chance to visit Guatemala. The port itself is called Puerto Quetzal. and it's on the western coast. Now, it's your gateway to the colonial city of Antigua, not to be confused, of course, with the Caribbean island, and it's earned a UNESCO World Heritage status for its architecture and ruins. Now, you can drive into the mountains to the beautiful old Antigua, which of course was once the country's colonial capital, and discover these beautiful bougainvillea draped buildings and breathtaking views of emerald volcanoes. You can also travel to the famed Lake Atalan and step back in time as you encounter the indigenous people and all their finery that still live along the lakeshore. Another great option here, of course, is touring coffee plantations and visiting the Pacaya volcano, which is one of the country's many active mountains.
Okay, heading back to Costa Rica, you also have Puerto Limon. And now the only way to get around Puerto Limon's Tortuguero National Park is by boat. Nice way to do it. It's made up of miles of rainforest which stretch right through the Atlantic shores and offers close encounters with the green tortoise, crocodiles, monkeys and exotic birds, all seen at water level at the canals. Now, Costa Rica's sloth sanctuary is spread over 200 acres and it gives a great insight into the habits of the creatures. It's not just sloths either, there's monkeys, iguanas and more than 200 species of birds that live in the area.
The Veriga Rainforest is also home to the National Institute of Biodiversity. It's a research and conservation organisation that discovers new wildlife each year. You can hike up through the vegetation, you can pay a visit to the centre to learn about what lies in the forest. However, my real highlight here is something called the Braulio Carrillo National Park, and it has the first aerial tramway in Central America. You're going to be up above the trees, at times 100 foot high, and close enough to touch tiny orchids, spectacularly coloured birds and butterflies, and if you're lucky, maybe even a toucan or monkey. All right, thanks very much. I hope that has been useful for you. I hope it's given you a really good background on the Panama Canal, the history, the ports, the itineraries. Any questions, get in touch. Thank you to everyone that has been in touch in the last few weeks. Glenn, how do they do it?
A number of different ways you can do it. We always say it, hello@planetcruise.co.uk. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter. Make sure you go onto our YouTube, subscribe. It's free to do there, and watch the other 80 episodes of Planet Cruise Weekly. And of course, if you're looking for cruising the Panama Canal, or you think, I don't want to go there, I want to go somewhere different, we've got nearly 17,000 cruises on our site. And then give us a call in the office and we'll get you booked on something.
Click the link if you want to go straight through now. Big thank you to these people who have been in touch over the past week. Again, forgive us if we didn't mention everyone, but we only get a couple in at the end of the show. First of all, Janet Pryatt. She said, I went on Jewel last year, Rome to the Caribbean, beautiful ship, had just had a refit and a wonderful crew from the lady captain downwards. And photos as well, photos are brilliant. Big thank you to Karen Farndell, who sent us a photo of our cameraman, Gav. Thanks very much for watching. I've been Keith, this is Glenn, and we'll see you again soon.